Thank you very much, Heather, for adjusting to a Zoom call when we thought we'd be on Facebook Live. I really appreciate this. And thank you for coming again. And I'm going to keep pestering you because, you know, I know that you will give us the best advice. So thank you.
So I think we're on to something that's quite serious,
Yes.
which is talking about the emotional impact of long-term quarantine, which is really apparent that that's where we're headed. I don't know how long your country has been in a quarantine. It's been over 2 months for us in California. How long has your country been in, or at least your region?
I think it's about 49 days now.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
It's a long time.
So what I wanted to touch on today was the psychological impact of being in social isolation.
Yes.
And I understand that there's actually some people that, certainly there's a lot of people that are in isolation with their families.
Yes.
And that's a whole other set of issues sometimes or not. But what's interesting is there is definitely an impact. Never mind, the piece that I'm looking at also is people obviously are very worried. A lot of people are worried about their jobs and the finances, and never mind their health as well. But probably the biggest thing that I was hearing from you is people are feeling a lot of these feelings. And one thing I heard you say was there's sadness and
feeling
fatigue.
low.
Yeah, I would say yes. The common experiences globally is except for maybe some countries like Sweden, and I'm hearing Quebec is opening up too, which is where I'm from, Quebec, Canada. The long-term lockdown, it definitely has an impact. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background about the idea around quarantine fatigue. Definitely a lot of these emotions of sadness, loneliness, fear, low energy, all of that's very, very normal. So I just want to validate that. And I think that's, you know, when I talk a little bit more about how to cope, I'll get into that more. But, you know, the reason for I think maybe it's just me, but I think people like to kind of understand, like, well, why are we feeling this way? Other than understanding that we're in a lockdown, is that we are social creatures. And certainly a lot of studies, we know this already from people being in some sort of confinement or, you know, solitary confinement or jails, is that we need to have face-to-face. And I think the biggest lesson we're getting out of all of this is that our bodies actually attune to each other. And yes, we're doing this Zoom right now, but I'll tell you right now, it would be much more of a quality experience for you and I, at least, to have a face-to-face conversation. To be doing this in, you know. And so the most important thing that people need to be reminded of is that the reason they're feeling a lot of these intense emotions, never mind with what the circumstances are, is that our bodies are wired to be where we see each other. And that's where electronics fail. And I think it's a good lesson in the sense for all of us to realize when we go back to whatever the normal times are going to be, that, gee, maybe we do need to be doing less electronics and more getting together face to face. So that's one part of it. Another thing is, I really want to emphasize what you were saying is that there's so much change going on as far as, obviously, you know, economically, and certainly, like I'm hearing, certainly in your country and in our country too, people face with some major challenges around, you know, the basics of just trying to put food on the table, but also the unpredictability. So when you talk about a long-term quarantine, we don't know. So I know here in California, it's really hard because we're trying to figure out, my stepdaughter is supposed to get married in the fall, and we're trying to figure out, are we even going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
But there's such an unpredictability, and we're going to have to obviously make a decision sometime this summer.
Yes.
So what has people feeling very uncomfortable, and that would attribute to the anxiety and the sadness and irritability, is unpredictability, a lot of change, and a lack of control over the change too. Our countries, obviously our leaders are telling us this is what we need to do. So most of us have been trying to follow that, which seemed to make sense, but it's not like we have a lot of say.
Yeah.
Another thing that's really important to acknowledge is when we do when we do this confinement thing, as much as we may like our house and everything, having the same environment actually can have a negative impact on you. So I've actually jokingly, and I've been doing it, and it actually makes a difference. One thing I've been doing, I'm going to get into coping, I can't help it, but is I've been moving furniture around and changing pictures and stuff. And every time my
Okay.
husband walks down into the living room, he's like, oh, we have a different look down here. But it actually helps you psychologically
Okay.
to
Yeah.
kind of change up your space.
Yes.
But anyway, back to the reasons why for this phenomena of the quarantine
Quarantine.
fatigue is we have overstimulation and understimulation. So the understimulation is the same environment, and also not getting out there, not being able to have contact with people or go to your job or whatever. The overstimulation is actually a lot of electronics and really information overload. I mean, we can't help. A lot of us are trying to understand what's going on. So we're looking up, maybe we're watching television and watching the news, or maybe you're not, maybe you're just reading a lot about what's going on, but that's information overload. So it's really weird because we're having understimulation and overstimulation. So that's my piece on kind of the why I think we're experiencing a lot of these very roller coaster emotions.
Yes. 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 Thank you so much, Heather. And what can we do to, like you told us, you can change your furniture around and change the look around. But what can we do in general to be able to deal with quarantine fatigue? What can you do with the fear and the sadness and the feeling of being suffocated and the feeling of guilt that you can only do so much to help the other, What can one do?
Okay. Yes. So coping with this phenomena is something obviously myself and my colleagues are faced with right now with dealing with our clients, and then for ourselves. But that's something that we're all trying to figure out. And I feel like everyone, including lay people, are coming up with some fabulous ideas on how to handle this. The most important, I have a bunch of points, so I'm hoping that it doesn't sound a little too dry when I'm giving here. Hopefully it's helpful.
Won't be. It'll be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I want to really emphasize for everyone, and I do this as a therapist too, is to normalize and validate the feelings. So if you're feeling sad, or you're feeling irritable, or just say, yes, this is the emotional roller coaster of this situation. And it doesn't mean you act on those feelings or you act them out. There's one little point I want to get into though, around the feelings, is I really want to differentiate between sadness and depression. And one of the things I'm seeing with a lot of my clients is they're telling me they're depressed, and then I'll get in there and say, because I'd never seen this. Most of my clients are what we call the worried well, and they're high anxiety, high achieving people. And that's the clientele I work with right now. So sadness obviously is a really normal response, I would say, to this situation, because there's a lot of things going on that would be normal to be sad about, never mind your situation living, in confinement. Depression is a disease. It is not, so there's a real difference. So if somebody is really having a difficult time, and it does seem like there's more of a depressed, part of it, then maybe that they do need to speak to a professional. And certainly if they're having some really dark thoughts and feelings, I'm going to be really emphasizing, go, do some telehealth. And I know there's therapists, I'm sure,
Yes, there
online
are.
that you can
Yes,
speak to in
yes,
India. And I'm really emphasizing that. But
yes,
the sadness thing, I think all you can do is kind of, obviously, even those people, some of my people do want to go on meds. I'm not certainly promoting meds, but occasionally to take the edge off, it's not a bad thing. But I think there's to get more into the coping, there's other ways to
yes,
self-soothe and self, take care of yourself.
yes, definitely.
So the next thing I wanted to mention is, and I think I mentioned this last time, but maybe not. I can't remember. But and this is, you see this when you look on the internet, is that you do need to have a schedule,
Yes,
because our schedules have been really mixed up. So I still try to, because certainly the days kind of blur together, but I'm
yes,
really still trying for myself to, I do have work, so it
yes,
kind of the week is defined. But I
yes,
think it's really important for people to kind of set a schedule of some sort, because that
yes,
gives them a little more, we kind of like a routine. We do better with a routine.
yes, I
And
agree.
then, yeah, what about yourself? Are you doing
I,
some sort of
yes,
routine or?
I have a fixed schedule. I'm pretty fixed, except the days when we're shooting our international web series. So about twice a week, we 2 days a week, we work on that. And then I have my Cope with Hope every day. And so, yeah, and then I wake up normally at the same time around 6:30 a.m. every day. And then I have, the yoga, the meditation, chanting, and I sleep by 10 normally at
Right,
night.
right.
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah, that's
pretty
good.
fixed. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the next thing is we need to move our bodies and we need exercise, and that's just a given. I sound like a doctor. All our doctors say that, but that's a norm. And
Yeah.
then along with that, trying to get, and I don't know what the parameters are in your city, but I know trying to get outdoors is important if that's safe.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's not, but
Yeah.
getting outdoors, obviously, nature, even a blue sky can actually be uplifting. If you just look
Yeah.
at, if you have a blue sky, I don't mean to,
Yeah.
but trees,
Yes.
vegetation can be very grounding.
Yes.
So that's important. Then the next thing, which is something, Nan, you've been doing beautifully on here, which is the meditations, but is mindfulness.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people talk about gratitude, and I think that's beautiful and wonderful to do that. But sometimes when people are in this survivor mode that we really are in, it's more about just working on your breath. And this, this
Yes.
is your area. So I am really enjoying your meditations that you do. I've been doing, I don't always catch them live. I didn't get it
Yes.
today, but
Mm.
I've been looking at them after, because you've been recording them. So
Yes.
I've been doing that. I've been following along with that. I'm one of your
Thank you.
followers.
Thank you.
It's very, very helpful.
Thank
And
you.
you said something that is just wonderful, which is little holidays for the mind.
Yes.
And I just thought, this is wonderful what she's
Yeah.
doing. So
Yeah.
I really encourage people, that's the mindfulness work. Yes, it's wonderful if you can do a gratitude list, but not everybody's there. If
No.
they're worried about being, whatever it is, you can't, it's a little difficult. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying.
But I
I don't
just
know if you
really
want to
feel
add.
3 minutes, 5 minutes, even 2 minutes, like put your timer on and just for 2 minutes, give your mind a little holiday. Like befriend your mind. Your mind is your best friend, and it needs that little time out. Like you said the last time, that you need time out when things get like very, very overwhelming. So the same, your mind needs time out. So befriend your mind and
Right.
give it a holiday. And you can do this throughout the day. It's not difficult. I'm not saying sit for 1 hour. Sit for 5 minutes,
Right.
for 3 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
Our mind needs kindness at the moment. What do you think? Yeah.
Oh, yes. So I'm going to get into something,
Yes.
which is self-compassion.
Yes.
which is really the piece that people probably need to, and giving themselves, like you said, the kindness and self-compassion is really, really important.
Yeah.
I can't help it in this talk. I'm going to get into neuroscience in a minute. I
Please
just love
do.
that stuff.
I love it.
I'm going to give you more. But before I get there, one more point I want to talk about, and this is a huge one, which with ways to cope with this quarantine fatigue. And it's like, oh, well, how are you supposed to do this? Is connection. Obviously, remember I talked about the monkey brain and
Yes.
how important it is to hug the monkey brain. Well, how do you hug people when you can't hug people? But
Yes.
you do the best you can. I don't know if you guys are having where you're starting to step down. Like, we were very fortunate that we're starting to open up a little bit. And so we felt comfortable having 2 of our 4 kids and their significant others come over for Mother's Day last night. And
Yeah.
we still kept the distancing thing. So it's weird for me not to be hugging them. But
Yeah.
that was a step in that direction. But I can't tell you, I told my husband, I feel it, because there is apparently when we are around people as well, and certainly mothers, when they see their children, it's oxytocin that's released. And I
Yes.
felt like I last night, and then this morning when I woke up, I told him I felt like I had a shot of drugs or something, just seeing them. Because it'd been over 2 months, right, that I
Yes.
hadn't really seen them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, not that I'm encouraging, I'm not telling people to go out running out there and start seeing all these people. Obviously, we need to follow whatever the safety protocols are.
Yes.
But connection's important. So the thing I suggest to people, and they're suggesting, is have an intention to reach out, at least on phone and Zoom or FaceTime,
Yes.
at least maybe 5 people a day, if you can do that. But certainly don't go a day without reaching out, especially if you're on your own.
Yes. Yes.
Makes sense. Yeah. So that's the last point in that. So I don't know if you want me to get into my neuroscience.
Oh, definitely. Of course I do.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about being in a negative state, because I think people, when they start understanding the neuroscience, and all my clients love this stuff, as I've said before, it's helpful. So I'm just looking, because I've got his name up here. I always forget his name. But we're actually born in a negative state.
Oh.
And this has been documented. And there's a reason for that. Because if you think about it, evolutionary, from that perspective, we needed to be on guard, because, we didn't need to have predators attacking us. So the thinking is, if you're in the survival state, you're trying to, protect yourself. So if there's a tiger in the room, you can't be all happy. And so what I'm trying to say to people is, look, we're in survivor mode, and your body and your brain saying, be careful, understandably, because if you're all happy and there's a tiger in the room, that's not going to be very helpful. So if you kind of get what I'm saying about that.
Yes.
Now, I do have some really great resources for your people today that and there's so many, but just a couple that I chose. This thinking comes from a book called Buddha's Brain. Have you ever heard of it?
No. Buddha's Brain. No.
It's called Buddha's Brain, and it was written by a professor at UC Berkeley called Dr. Rick Hanson.
Okay.
And he runs this wonderful program that I kind of suggest anybody can go online and look it up. But it's that UC Berkeley has a greater good, what's it called? It's called the Greater Good Science Center.
Okay.
And it's just www.greatergood.berkeley.edu.
Okay.
And he has so much in there about self-care, self-compassion, and about dealing with your feelings. And I really recommend, because it's all based on neuroscience too. So I highly recommend him and his program. And then I don't know the link, but Stanford also has a program, and it's probably very neuroscience oriented, but it's on compassion.
Okay.
So those are just two areas. And I would imagine even in India, there's some good resources like that.
Yes, there
But
is.
anyway, Buddha's Brain by Dr. Rick Hanson. And then the other book that a lot of my folks like, that's a little more layperson oriented and was written by, a layperson, is The Happiness Project
Yes.
by Gretchen Rubin. And so what I want to really, really, probably the biggest message I want to get across, besides having self-compassion during this hard time, is it takes effort and work to be happy. It's not something that we do naturally. We're not born in that state. So don't try not to pathologize yourself that you're kind of feeling, obviously if there's some serious stuff going on, that you get help, but
Yes.
you think, this is kind of normal.
Yes.
So does that make any sense to you? What do you think about
it
that?
makes amazing sense to me. And the last thing that I want to ask you about, and is that what do you do if you feel a little guilty about being more privileged than the other? How?
Guilt.
I don't
I
feel
can't.
guilty. I don't feel guilty because, I had my many fights and talks with the divine and with God from when I was very young. If ever I saw something happen, I'd have my little dialogue going on. For me, prayer is that. And I'd say, but why? That's not fair. How come I have more? How come that person has this? I had these lot of concerns, and I used to feel terrible when I saw the news, and I couldn't go there and pick up that child and hold it to my, to me, and not let it be harmed. And then I realized that there's only so much I can do. So the best thing I felt that I could do was pray. But what do you do if you feel, oh my God, but I have so much, and you feel guilty about it. You feel guilty.
Well, I mean, I think it's really interesting. It's a really good question. And certainly the guilt thing, I was kind of laughing about. No, I'm not laughing about people feeling guilty, but I'm laughing in that the fact that I have a lot of Catholic folks that come to me that have Catholic guilt.
Yeah,
and that's been a big thing for them. Like that guilt thing is huge,
Yeah.
But I love, because that's been your process to figure out how to live in a world where there's so many people that don't have what we have. And you found a way to handle that. I think people have to ask themselves, what, like for you, it was prayer. What do you need to do you're always going to have a certain amount of guilt maybe, and that's a good thing, because that means you're not a sociopath, right? It means you care, you have empathy. So I always reframe everything. So I think, oh, well, that means I'm a caring, loving person if I feel kind of guilty about the fact that, you know me, I always find it, So, but I would say for some people, they have to look inward as well, look in like you did. And it's amazing you did that as a child. But I would say that, yes. A lot of people are doing a lot of good, and that's important. So I think that's one way to at least absolve, or at least bring down the level of guilt they might have. So, a lot of people are involved with giving back. Like, for instance, one of our friends has a restaurant, and he's been able to bring his employees back because he did the GoFund, but what he's doing in turn is he's feeding people that are needing, the needy. So he's got a program that he's doing where he's got his employees there, but he's also giving to people in need. So it's a beautiful thing. So that's how he.
Yes. I interviewed two brothers who are doing the same thing. They have a restaurant, and they're doing the same thing. I think it's lovely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's like, okay, if you're consumed with guilt, I think a lot of it for people is like, take a pause, and we're in a big pause. I'm calling this, by the way, the year of the pause. 2020 is the year of the pause. I've decided.
I love it.
I'm not really going anywhere. Then take some time and think about, well, is there something I can do? Not that it's going to fix the feeling, but at least it's something that maybe I am feeling, and look inward And
Yeah.
you know, something is amazing, and I am so impressed what people are doing. And
Yes.
it's going to be quite the year, I think, for a lot of us. It's we're going to see, like, I would never in a million years think I would be doing this with you if this hadn't happened. It's amazing, you know.
It's amazing. And thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, Heather. I feel so grateful that you've come a second time and that you've made yourself available. And God, I mean, I'm very, very grateful to be blessed like this. Really, thank
Well,
you.
it's a blessing for me. It's a privilege for me to be able to be able to connect with you all the way, what, 12 and a half hours zone difference or
Yeah.
something.
Thank you for making
Thank
the
you for
effort.
having me again. Yeah.
Thank you for adjusting. And please find out from your kids about Facebook Live. Next time we'll do a Facebook Live for sure. Because I'm sure I'll message you in a
Okay.
few days saying, Heather, can you help with this, please?
Oh, that's so sweet. All
Thank you,
right.
Heather.
Thank
Love
you for
you.
having me.
Thank you so much. Bye.